Hi, my name is Jamie, and welcome to the One World, One Voice, Your Story Project. We share stories from people all over the world and from all different walks of life. Because here's the thing, no matter where you are on this wild planet, and no matter what journey you have already been on, we all have our own unique story, which brings our own unique perspectives to the table. And you never know who you might inspire or completely transform simply by getting real and sharing your story. And right now, while the whole world is dealing with COVID-19, there are 7 billion people all venturing through on their own unique path. So drop in with us to hear some of these stories. And on that note, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Corona Diaries. Okay, so let's get started. So today is the date. Today is Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. And I would love to know who I'm sitting here with. So if you can start us off, tell me, and by us, I mean me and my imaginary friend that you saw behind me earlier. Who am I speaking with? What's your name? How old are you? Where are you in the world? So geographically, where are you? But then also physically, where are you? And what do you do?
Yeah, my name is Sean Michael Broder. I was born on November 9th, 1994, so I am now 25 years old. I'm actually 9,302 days old. I found that out yesterday.
I was about to say, how the hell do you know that off the top of your
head? I was just curious, so I looked up an age calculator. So I was like, I wonder how many days I've been alive. And it was like 9,301, so now it's 9,302.
Cool.
I was born in Boston, and I'm now living in Prague, in the Czech Republic. And I work both as an actor and a tour guide.
Cool. Okay. So you are 25, will be turning 26 this year, you know, your actual birth date. Thank you for that. And you're in Prague, in the Czech Republic. And are you in a house? Are you in an apartment? Where do you live?
I'm in an apartment. I'm actually in one of the Pontilocks. It was kind of like refurbished, but this was the kind of easy to make, you know, kind of like low income housing that they built during the communist era. The
Okay.
70s and 80s. Yeah,
okay.
So the walls are extremely thin.
Perfect.
But yeah, and then if anyone from Prague is watching this, I live on Koněvova.
Okay. Perfect. So do you live with roommates in your apartment?
Mm-hmm. So this door is slightly ajar. Right behind me is my roommate Claudia's room. It's her boyfriend Michael is about to move in like a week, and also her dog Bob.
Okay, so there's 3 humans and a dog.
Well, yeah, it's really like 2.5 humans. I guess really, I mean, like we'll get into it. It's really, I guess, 3 because it's 2 and then 2 halves and then a dog.
Oh, do you have a half? Do you have a partner?
Yeah, I think that'll probably be the most interesting part of my quarantine.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We will go there. So 2 full-times, 2 part-times, and a dog, Bob. Awesome. Mm-hmm. And you are an actor and a tour guide. Interesting industries to be in during this time.
I was fucked.
Okay. I'm only laughing because you're laughing, and what else can we do but laugh about it, right? So, okay,
well, I
Sean.
missed the question because I was pretending to cry.
That's okay. Do you need a virtual tissue?
I want it from your virtual friend.
Okay. We're going to have to wait till after the interview for that. Now, before we go into the tissue and get him back here, let's go back in time a little bit, Sean. Do you remember the first time that you heard about coronavirus or COVID-19?
Absolutely. Maybe not like the first time's like a little bit vague, but I remember it developing.
That was a pretty steadfast absolutely to then say it's a little vague.
So like, sorry, I remember it really picking up, and I remember specifically, my light bulb memory is like once it hit Italy, I was a tour guide and I was giving a tour and this girl was just telling me she came from Milan, and I was just like, all right, like I'm right next to you, so.
How did you feel in that moment?
I was like, oh, but I wasn't like personally concerned for my health, and I felt like it wasn't, you know, it was a little irrational to just jump away from her in that moment. Like I did know, like, okay, this girl came from Milan, and I'm right next to her, and maybe during the tour I should be conscious and like hygienic. Like if she wanted to give me a hug at the end or anything, like maybe I should watch out for that. Or like, when I get to the cafe break, I should think about washing my hands. Um, but yeah, I wasn't gonna just freak out in that moment because, to be honest, if she already infected me, she already infected me.
Sure, yeah. The damage was done. Do you remember, what was the date of that? Do you remember?
Um, it had to be late February or the beginning of March, maybe like March 2nd, March 3rd. By the
Okay.
time it started kind of picking up, I remember telling my bosses that I just didn't want to work in tourism at that moment.
Okay, which was probably beginning of February.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, it was
Excuse me, beginning of
March.
March. Beginning of March.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, okay, that's the first time you remember it being like, whoa, like this is right here. But when was the first time you remember even hearing about it? Or was it not until it hit Italy that you heard about it?
No, I heard about it, but like honestly, in like retrospect, it just seems so small. Like it just seemed distant. It was just like
Mm,
this thing in China, and like they were talking about banning travel from China.
got it.
Uh, but it's really like when it hit Italy, I remember like just thinking like it's in Italy, like they had accounts of people in Italy, people in Germany, and people in Austria getting it, and I was just like, okay, one thing is Italy, two things is like fucking Germany and Austria, which share a border with the Czech Republic, so it's like a matter of time.
And isn't it weird? Like, I mean, it was the same. I'm going to speak from a US perspective. And by the way, I'm a traveler. This is officially now the longest that I've been in one place in 2.5 years. It's
Oh,
been about 2 months. So
yeah,
I have a global perspective, and the fact that usually I am somewhere else, but for almost all of this, in the sense of the whole time that the US was aware of it, and I mean the general population, okay, because people were aware of it a long time beforehand. I was in the US, and yeah, it wasn't until it started hitting close to home that we really became
you're like,
consciously
oh,
aware, because it was in the back of our memories, right? Like things had come up in the news, but why is that? As humans, we don't give a shit until it actually is going to impact me too, by the way, right? Or it could.
yeah. Well, I mean, even like in the situation, like I'm sure that you've gotten a broad spectrum, and I mean, it's super interesting in the times that it comes, because I remember one of the first things when it did start hitting and things started picking up. I remember being really concerned not over the virus but the misinformation from it,
Totally.
and
Totally.
that freaked me out because it was
And it
just
was a
like,
huge problem. There was a lot of news about that too. And then you start thinking, should I actually worry? Should I not? What is real? What isn't? There was already all this shit about fake news. And I mean, you're from Boston. You have an American
yeah,
perspective, no matter where you're living. It never goes away.
but
And the
but
fake
even with
news shit, right, was already
yeah,
a real thing.
but even with Boston being hit hard, uh, I for weeks I didn't know anyone that got corona. I knew one person in Prague who I met twice, but she was really just a friend of a friend. And
Well,
that was it.
actually, Sean, that's a question that I ask everybody, and dig into that a little bit more for me. As of today, April 28th, 2020,
Yeah.
do you know anyone that's been diagnosed positive with COVID-19?
Yeah. So I do. Um, other than Tom Hanks. My buddy, AJ, I didn't mean to drop names. My buddy AJ, I was talking to him the other day, and I just like, we were talking, and we were just catching up. And I just mentioned offhand, like benignly, like wouldn't it be crazy to get it or something? Uh, or he just mentioned like, oh, like yeah, Corona like sucks. It's like it sucked, and I was like, you had it? He's like, yeah, my dad and I had it, and I was like, really? And then he was like, for him it wasn't that bad. He just had a fever, and he had a loss of taste for a couple weeks. Um, yeah, so he just had a loss of taste for a couple weeks, and like the thing that I thought was craziest is that him and his father got it, but his sister didn't get it, his mom didn't get it, nor did his sister's boyfriend get it.
Yeah, it's and you're right. I have heard a lot of perspectives, and I've heard a lot of stories, and I've heard different stories about people getting it. I heard a story about a guy in New York that the day that he got it, he said it literally felt like somebody came and sucked the life out of him. Actually, Sean, if you want to hear part of the story, his name's Victor, and he is on the Corona Diaries project, and he reads a letter in that video of that first night where he literally felt like he was sitting with death. Okay, and then I've talked to people like you as well, where it was a bad cold and they lost their sense of smell and taste. There are so many unknowns about this thing. That's what is weird to me, is there's no consistency at all.
And
at
then
all.
Yeah, and then CNN like released an article saying that like this can cause strokes in like young adults, which I was why young adults? Like not like people over a certain age, and
It's
two,
very,
like fuck.
the whole thing is very strange, and actually, this is really random, and you're just reminding me. I spoke to somebody yesterday who said that their mother just had a stroke out of the blue, and I need to ask her about that. Actually, you're reminding me. But yes, it's really weird. So, okay, I hope it stays this way, that you don't know anybody personally in your life that has died from it or been seriously affected. I really hope it stays that way. I mean, the other thing that's super weird is there's plenty of people that think they have gotten it, but haven't been able to get tested, or the test came back negative. I mean, there's so many unknowns, but okay, let's not go too far into that. But the person that you know is in the States. Do you know people in Prague?
Just one. So
Just
that
one.
like friend of a friend.
A friend of a friend. Okay. Okay, got it. Okay. So let's go back to this tour. So you're on this tour, you're a tour guide. A lot of international people, I imagine, right? Are these like these are tourist tours of Prague?
Yeah. So it's anyone. It's
Okay.
everyone and anyone.
And I've been to Prague. I know it's a touristy place, and there's like
Yeah.
these free walking tours. I mean, and there's people from all over the world there, and you're of course in Eastern Europe, so it makes sense. You have people from Italy all over the world. When that gal said that she was from Milan, clearly you instantly had a reaction, but we're like, I'm not going to overreact, and for a lot of reasons, which you already explained. Could you see reactions on other people in the group?
Oh yeah, like a dude behind me was like, "Ah!" Yeah, he did not react well. And like, to be honest, that's how I felt internally. Like, I don't want to get it. And like, this flight or fight kind of came over me, but I know that like I can just do the best I can in those circumstances. And in all honesty, I think that like just because you're in close proximity with someone, like like the 2 meter thing, right? Just kind of like keep your distance, like just when someone's sick, and especially at that point, like I did not have in my mind that it's like highly infectious or anything like that. I knew that it was like COVID-19, and in essence like similar to other viruses or flus we've had. And I've been around sick people before. I've hooked up with sick people and I haven't gotten sick from them. Doesn't mean I was going to go and hook up with her, like, but like,
Absolutely. And by the way, like I've had the flu. I think I've only had it once in my life. It was like 4 years ago, knock on wood, 5 years ago, whatever. It was terrible. I mean, I remember feeling so sick that I couldn't speak one day. It was just, and by the way, my partner at the time, he was with me the whole time. We were sleeping in the same bed. He never got the flu.
Yeah.
And so to your point, it's like, I'm far from it. And I probably don't wash my hands as much as I should. And I eat shit from the ground and whatever. I'm not a germaphobe and I'm terrified of people right now. It's just like, I can't help but think about it. And every little thing I'm like, oh, is this it? And it's weird. So yes, to have that reaction is normal.
But because don't you think the most dangerous thing is the misinformation and the unknown?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you think about, what does fear and stress do to the body? Are you kidding me? And that's going to make
that kind
us
of makes it worse. Like, you're
more
going to put
prone to
yourself
getting
under more
sick.
stress.
It's a vicious cycle. It really is. Okay. So when this happened, you said this was end of February, early March. And clearly people in your group were freaked out. I think people that were traveling at the time were aware of what was going on. You kind of had to be ish. What was the feeling in Prague at the time? I know you can't speak for the whole country of the Czech Republic, but what was the feeling in Prague at that time? Or had anything changed in your life? What was the government and the news and the media saying?
I mean, the thing is that it's all kind of blended together, because to be honest, by the time it kind of picked up in the Czech Republic, like by the time, I think that there was definitely less than a dozen cases. I think there was about 6. They shut everything down.
Okay, so it happened. They acted quick as soon as it started to become a thing.
Yeah, they first were like, no concerts over 100 people. Then that dropped down to 50, and really like the policies just went like quicker and quicker. Schools quickly shut down. I think this happened in like the span of a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And early March, do you remember? So you went into a state of full, unless it was like essential, everybody was stay at home, shelter in place, lockdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember when that was?
Sorry?
Do you remember when that was?
No, I just remember like beginning of March.
Okay. Yeah, time blurs.
A date, if you ever want like a record, like out of this interview, I can definitely like send you a date from like an article where they say like, you know, this just announced so-and-so banned.
Sure.
Yeah, but like to me, could have been the 8th, could have been the 12th, could have been the 6th, the 4th. I really.
Okay. So somewhere around the beginning of the second week of March, we'll say, is when it happened.
Yeah.
And there were only about, let's say, less than a dozen cases at the time.
I'd go as far to say less than 10.
Okay. Did it feel like it made sense what they were doing, considering how?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Like even if there was 8 people with it, and it's a disease where you can be asymptomatic for 2 weeks and they don't have a vaccine for it, and we've seen how it like has overwhelmed hospitals. Like I'm like, makes perfect sense. Like, yeah, you don't want to fuck shit up. You don't want to have it like the idea that a doctor has to determine like which life to save is like you don't want to go there.
No one ever wants to be in that situation. Okay. And let's talk about the impact of that. So they shut it down when you had less than a dozen cases, less than 10 maybe. How about now? How many cases have you hit your peak? What's the current state of affairs?
I believe we definitely hit over 7,000. But like honestly, like when I talk to family and everything, I'm like, we kind of have the best case scenario, and like things are opening up again, which I'm like, I feel weird about. There's something in my core where I'm like, this is like a little quick. But like I don't know, like you can go to like non-essential stores now, for example.
Okay. And this is a very interesting thing to dig into. And it's only started happening when I talk to people in these interviews over the last couple of weeks. And hang on one second, Sean. Okay, resuming. So also I'm going to pin you because when I say something or laugh and it pops back up to me with Zoom. Okay, cool. So we're recording again. So, okay, you said non-essentials are opening. I got up again. And you're feeling weird about it. And I feel weird about it too. In Colorado, we are going to be supposedly reopening, I think on like May 6th or May 8th, something like that. Slowly reopening, and it is a weird feeling. It's really weird. But this isn't about me. This is about you. So I want to know about your weird feeling. When did Okay, so early March, now it's April 28th. Let's call it 6 weeks solidly. That sounds like you were in stay-at-home shelter in place.
Yeah, I guess so.
Safe to say 6 weeks?
Yeah.
And you were living, okay, and actually let me stop myself, because before I get into what's happening now, let's go back to what happened during that time period. So you said you were fucked when it came to your job.
Yeah. It's shut down.
Did you decide to stop working, or was it decided for you?
Well, the thing is that with tour guiding, I decided to not go because I knew that there were a lot of people passing through, and I felt like a lot of people could be asymptomatic. And not only is this like a danger to myself, but then it's also I can go around and infect other people. And at that point, I was just in a financial situation where I was like, I didn't feel like it was necessary to come to work. And like, I like tour guiding, but sometimes I'm not in love with it. And so like, I was like, am I really like, I'm not in the mood for this. I'm not in a dire financial need. And I don't want to get corona. And I feel like this is the way I would get corona.
Sure. And I want to acknowledge something that you said, because I think it's really important. You also said, I don't want to give it to other people. There is a social responsibility aspect of it too. Absolutely.
Well,
And
yeah,
you said it
it's
yourself.
like, it's to me like the inverse of the prisoner's dilemma.
Mm.
You know, which I heard, I'm not sure if I'm misusing this, but I heard tragedy of the commons, and I'm not sure if I just heard that and kind of tied it in with that, but it's essentially like, I mean, the tragedy of the commons, I think like kind of mass people doing the wrong thing. Because like, it's true, I mean, when you see, because I mean, it works on two fronts. I mean, one, like, yeah, like that's why the face mask thing is a thing, because if I wear a face mask, I'm not protecting myself from you, but I'm protecting you from me.
Yep.
Which is a useful thing. So if we both wear face masks, we both protect each other. If you don't wear one, then I'm at risk. If I don't wear one, you're at risk. So like, let's help each other out.
Right. And it's about, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that, and like, if you see people doing behavior where they're like, oh, I don't really care about the quarantine. You know, like, to be honest, in the last few weeks, like, you know, things have been lightening up and people want to go to the park, and that's not like off limits. But obviously you go to the park and like you sit on your own with like your roommates or people that you feel comfortable with, like social distancing. Because there are people that I'm like, okay, like, so for example, this girl that I've been seeing, and we go to a park and we sit down and we both sit there with our masks off. We're completely away from everyone else. But the thing is that when I would do that, I would look at other people to see if it was okay. If no one else had their masks off, then I wouldn't have done it. But because other people had their masks off, I felt comfortable taking my mask off. But then someone else can just see me with my mask off, you know, and say that it's comfortable, especially if the person that I saw with their mask off had left. Then they could see me and go, okay, this guy's doing it, you know? And that's just, I mean, we're simple. We're monkeys. So like, monkey see, monkey do.
Yes, absolutely. And there's still monkeys that end up being leaders of the pack, right? But for the majority, we do follow the leader. We're creatures of habit. We are social creatures, and we do follow. And that's actually one of the reasons why I think it's so fascinating doing these interviews, and also why this time period is so interesting, is because so many different groups of people from different cultures are experiencing the exact same thing right now and having to deal with it. Right? So in what are the ways in which different cultures are doing it and which people follow that kind of lead? And actually, you're bringing up something that I wanted to dig into specifically about the Czech Republic. And by the way, like, thank you for acknowledging the fact that you are making decisions based on other people, but also trying to be responsible. I don't think people are admitting that so much. We want to think that we're making decisions purely on our own accord. It's not the case at all.
I mean, I mean, like, obviously, I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to look like an asshole. But, like, for the sake of an interview and for the sake of information, like, whoever's, like, watching this, they need to know that, like, I do basic shit, too.
Sure, of course. And then there comes a time where you're like, fuck it, I also need to live my life. It's a really weird scenario. And also there comes a point where it's like, well, did I already have it? Do I not? How serious is this? Like, am I going to get it inevitable? I mean, there's so many factors at play when you're making these decisions. And I think another thing that you brought up is, well, if I put on my mask, then I'm protecting you from me. Do we have each other's backs as a world really in that way? I don't know. I think that tragedy in these scenarios bring that out in us more than other times, and actually makes me hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I think it is like a little bit of a flight or fight thing. Like, it is a beautiful thing that, you know, you can see in times of like the any times of crisis. You can see really people doing that. This actually came up in a Holocaust class that I was talking about, that I was in, and this guy who I didn't like, I thought he was super obnoxious, did this thing where he's just like, he was talking about Oskar Schindler, and he was like, maybe sometimes we only see like the brightest lights in the darkest times. And I was like, shut up. But like, honestly, like, he was kind of right. Like, when you have that strong contrast, you see the other side. I don't know, it's more polarizing. Like,
it's an unfortunate truth that when in times of tragedy, this is when the human spirit shines the most.
Yeah, and it's also like, you can see it on a personal life. Like, when shit goes down for you,
my God,
you're willing to get your shit together, to change your life.
But or you're not, right?
Or you're not. But what I mean
is, and then you die.
Like,
I mean, that's survival of the fittest. It is evolution in a way.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that sometimes we don't change things until shit hits the fan.
Not like sometimes, almost always. Think about relationships. How many times do you end a relationship and you look back and you're like, God, I should have done that months ago. You knew, but we wait until it's so bad.
Like, yeah, I'm like, I saw this coming. I remember feeling it. I remember the first time I felt this and went like, this is a danger. And then I fell off that cliff, you know?
Think about the virus, Sean. When did it start? In November. When did our politicians and government start hearing about it? Then. They probably thought to themselves, maybe this is going to become a thing. We should probably do something. But it wasn't until it actually became a problem.
That's a really good point. Because
it's the same shit. It happens all the time.
But if you apply it on like a relationship level, like I have issues with opening up, right? So like, it's kind of like selective. It's almost like, because sometimes, like, obviously in this interview, like, I'm being open and I'm being communicative, but like, when you get certain puncture points, certain vulnerabilities and weaknesses to myself, I have a very like ironclad difficulty with it. So like, sometimes I'll experience like an issue with a relationship and I don't know how to talk about it, you know? But it's like, I don't want to ruin a good time. I don't want to start this conversation that leads to a fight and might cause us to break up. I want to keep that up. I want to keep this good, you know? And like, the economy is kind of that for a lot of these people. It's just like, we don't want to shut shit down. We don't want to stunt things. At least when they talk about it in the perspective of Donald Trump, he did not want to slow down the economy. He did not want to receive damage onto the economy, because if he does that, especially in 2020, when his term is up, like, he's kind of fucking himself. Because if he loses that like 40% of support, like, he's fucked, you know? So like, of course he wants to keep the good times going. And I think that even like, I don't know, like, I don't want to get confused. It's just like, I think it's very weird that there are all these protests coming up and there's this total spin on coronavirus that also like Fox News is kind of pushing, you know? And it's like right after we had to begrudgingly accept to shut shit down and the economy did have to take this. And so it's almost like, well, this diehard Trump faction now has a sort of pariah within this. They even negate that, you know? So it's just like, it's a mind fuck.
It is a mind fuck for so many reasons. Many reasons. And it's very interesting how people are trying to twist this to use it certain ways. But I mean, he's fucked himself. There's too many lies and so many people are like, wow, I can't believe I ever tried. I mean, that's a whole other story. But let's go into the mind fuck part of it.
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have boots on the ground. I feel like people are very disconnected when it comes to political. I don't know how much of his people he had lost in the first term.
I think that this last couple of months has made a dramatic impact on that. And I don't think in a good way. Yes. Okay. And I'm very, very happy about it. At the same time, though, Sean, I mean, we're not talking about the election, and it is an election year. That's usually all you hear about. It's
Well, I mean,
very
like
crazy.
things did have to be put on hold. Like if you, anyone that wants to do their research, like you can look up how Czechs and specifically how Praguers feel about the current Prime Minister Andrej Babiš. Like it's usually not pleasant from what I hear. He doesn't have like a good reputation. He's kind of known as being like a bad boy in the dark, having connections to the secret police during the communist era and kind of using that and the privatization to the 90s to become the second richest man in the Czech Republic. But like, you know, people are like, yeah, I don't like him, but like, you know, he handled this well.
Well,
and I mean, like, there's some criticism there, like, trust me, because there is like, obviously, like, if, especially because politicians are considering this, they're using war kind of vocabulary to talk about this, so, you know, the battle with Corona, because it's obvious they want to galvanize people. They want people to feel like they're like doing something. But then it's like, okay, if you're going to use that, who are the war profiteers?
It's a very, like, very poignant question you asked, and I think we all know the answer. It's the politicians. They get to gain loyalty and trust, or
some of them. Well, yeah, you can. I sorry to interrupt. You can get like cynical about it, and you can say that there are politicians that have been benefiting from this, but there are even minor people, you know, and even like some people.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And like, my God. Honestly, even myself, despite being fucked by like because both of my industries are shut down, I've definitely benefited from this quarantine.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to ask you about the good stuff in just a moment, and I want to know how the government handled it, especially because I mean, geez, not that you came out of communism yesterday, but there's definitely still an after effect there, and Czech Republic dealt with the Holocaust and World War II, and in ways in which the U.S. and I'm so curious to hear about that. But before we do, I still want to talk to you about living over the last 6 weeks. You're in an apartment with other people. You've been at home. You also said you had this, sounds like budding relationship. Doesn't sound like one that was necessarily confirmed. So talk to me about all of that. And like, you know, there were people that I talked to, but I'm just going to give you snippets and you can choose which road to go down. People talking about what it was like to communicate rules and guidelines with roommates and boundaries and never having to deal with that before, or being with people 24/7, or I mean, figure out how to work together, or exactly the relationships. Well, if we're not living together, do we become a quarantine? Can I go there? Do you come here? All of that stuff. So you can dig into whatever you want, but I want to know what it's been like over the last 6 weeks before you started coming out of this.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing, because both my roommate and I started seeing people very like shortly. Mine shorter than hers, but hers still like a month maybe before the quarantine. And her boyfriend has a studio. So
convenient.
We ended up in a position where both of us could quarantine and be pretty much apart. Like sometimes she would come back here. And actually, I would say after the second week, about entering the third week, we went to my girlfriend's place. And we just switched it. I don't really know why. We really just like did it, and then like just did it as a one-off thing. And then it just stayed like that for another 2 weeks. So we basically did like 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Yeah. And it was like, honestly, like really funny, because it like, I'm sure anyone, if I say like I started a relationship like right before the quarantine, it was like fucking perfect. I had no problems. I had so much fun with her. She's an extremely deep sleeper. I am a night owl. She falls asleep at 10 or 11. I could blast a movie. I could play guitar next to her. And there was I couldn't even wake her. So like,
damn.
Yeah.
Jealous of that, of her sleep. And not of you being able to do what you want. I'm just like, I want to be able to sleep like that again. Jesus.
Yeah, no, it's honestly like someone brought it up the other day. They're like, isn't that like it's like, thank God we live in the times that we do, because definitely if we were living by Darwin's law, she'd be dead.
Oh, yeah.
She can't wake up with anything. Um, yeah, like, and honestly, like, we were really good friends before. So we established from the beginning, like, a very strong foundation of communication where we were able to work through things. And she also studied psychology, or she was a minor in psychology, but she's really fascinated by psychology. And that was super helpful for me, because I don't have a lot of, sometimes I have trouble. Like, I got into a fight with a friend the other day and I got really upset over it. And I was supposed to meet her and I didn't know how to talk about it. And then I explained kind of like, I really like, after like 8 to 10 minutes of like trying to write this fucking text out, I wrote it out, and then she's just like, oh, totally understand, babe. You need to process. And I was like, process. That's the word I needed. I need to process. And so, like, I do understand, though, that when it's with my own feelings that I need to, what I do is I just kind of establish a line. I say, like, here's this line. I'm not passing it. I'm not crossing it. Like, I'm not going to go and touch you in your own personal space, but this is everything behind me, you know? So, like, this is why I'm upset. This is why I'm frustrated. This is why I'm doing this. So, like, we were able to talk most things out. There was only, like, the second week, I started getting frustrated. And honestly, on both sides of my family, there's, like, a little bit of a temper. They get, like, very snippy, snappy. And so, like, yeah, we had, like, one point where, like, I snapped and she's like, all right, I'm going to cook lunch. I would like some space. And then I sat in my room being like, I don't know, like, it was, I like it, and that's the thing. That's where I felt like it was like a benefit for me. It felt weird. It felt like a movie. It felt like the ultimate vacation. And I'm also like an introvert. I love talking to people, but I like talking to people one-on-one. I don't like big groups. I generally, with bars, I mean, I can have a good time, but like, also drinking makes me feel like sloggy. Same thing, like smoking weed usually slows me down, gets me a little bit agitated. Like, I can't have good conversation. Um, so like, the whole thing was just this kind of detox, isolate yourself, sit with yourself, wake up in the morning and just wait to figure out what you want to eat for breakfast, not like wake up, time for breakfast, and like, oh, this is healthy for you. Like, I woke up the other day and I waited 2 hours. I waited 2 hours before I wanted to eat, and I was getting hungry. And then I was like, oh, I want yogurt with nuts. That's what I want. And that was awesome. I felt like so proud of myself that I was so in tune with myself. Because honestly, like, when I'm tour guiding, I won't. And I've really like abused myself from tour guiding, because I get tired at the end of the day and I decide to get a beer, or I default to go and meet up with a friend. And now I didn't have that option. I had to sit with myself. And that was like phenomenal.
I'm like beyond happy for you. And I love the fact that you took the opportunity to truly take the pause. And that's what it was. It was a forced pause. And I think so many people resist.
You know what it kind of was? Have you ever seen Lord of the Rings?
No.
Oh, really? Let me get this quote up, because I really want to get it right. Because there was this one quote, because I like, the funny thing is that we started it, and like, my girlfriend is like infamous, like, she cannot stay awake at night. Yeah?
Yeah, I get it.
So she passes out. So whenever we watch a movie at night, we couldn't, except the one. There was one where I was still up and she woke up at like 2 because she had been sleeping through the day and just this off thing. She woke up at 2. I was like, hey, and we started hanging out. And then we just talked about watching a movie. She's like, I want to watch The Greatest Showman. It's like, of course, then she stays up the whole fucking time. But when I want to put on Lord of the Rings, I'm not salty. I'm sorry. She's great. But so we we put on Lord of the Rings, and she fell asleep wicked early, and I watch it to the end, and like this quote kind of established the foundation for it, and even for my life, because I really have a lot of pressure with doing things because I want to be great. I know that I want to get to the top of this mountain, and I often pressure myself with my time, and I feel like it's not productive, and I'll beat myself up. I feel like I need that hustle, and I feel like I don't have it.
Oh,
It
I
makes me
get it.
feel shitty. So then I'm watching Lord of the Rings, and like the premise. Like Frodo Baggins has this ring of power that is like, if the evil guys get it, if Sauron gets it, like it's the end of the world. And this small hobbit's basically like suffering because it's just and honestly, like fairly, like why the fuck does this hobbit have to do this thing that no one else can? And so he's breaking down because he's like seeing it's basically like, a boy being born his generation and having a nice upbringing and then being sent to war. And so he just says to Gandalf, played by the great Sir Ian McKellen, I wish it need not have happened in my time. And so Gandalf says, so do I. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to do is to decide what to do with the time that we have been given.
Oh my God, you have to send me that quote. You have to send me that quote.
And it was
It's
just
so
like,
perfect. It's so fucking perfect.
I honestly butchered it because I got these goosebumps that were, but I was there like at 1:30 in the morning, like.
Oh, but it's so true. I get it, Sean. And I'm so glad you read it because yeah, we don't get to choose the cards we're dealt. We don't get to choose what we go through. We get to choose how we react and respond and our actions and attitudes towards it. And
100%. Yeah.
and that is what this is.
That's so beautiful. Yeah.
It is. And
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I've had rough times, and I know that look, you learn something, or you get a tool, or you get a key that unlocks you, and it's easy to kind of forget about it. You kind of have to fight to keep it in. But I don't know. Even like reading it now, I'm just like, wow, it's gonna be okay.
Of course it's gonna be okay. Of
Yeah.
course it's gonna be okay. It all happens as it's supposed to. And sometimes we have to go through the hard times to see the light, to learn the lessons, to come out
100%.
stronger, to have the pause to hold the mirror up. We need it. I asked a gal, I ask everybody, so I will ask you this, the good stuff that comes out of it. And her first response was, I think it's a chance for us to remember why we're actually here. Why are you, Sean, actually here? And what do you want for your life? This is the time to think about it. When else have we had a forced pause like this? So you did it. And I'm really, really, really happy for you. And more to come, right? Work doesn't end now. It's only just beginning, actually. And I'm excited to see what happens. By the way, it doesn't mean that it's easy. What you're doing, sitting and being with yourself, is not easy. And it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Well, even when you're saying it there, like I have this I get this perfunctory. I'm just like, ugh, like, fuck. It's hard. It's hard sometimes. Sometimes it's insanely easy. Sometimes it's easy for that switch to click. But then there are those days, I don't know. I always remember you get an epiphany late at night, or you talk to a friend, and you really figure things out. And that's not the challenge, really getting through it. It's in that day where you feel nothing, or you feel like nothing at all. And you have to remind yourself. Because of course, I can now, I feel energized or ready, or I feel good about it. But when I get off this phone call, or when I wake up tomorrow, or on May 7th, am I gonna have it?
Who knows?
Yeah.
And what's the point of even thinking about it? This moment is all that we have, truly. The future doesn't exist, but it is a practice. It is truly a practice over and over again, just like gratitude, just like anything. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's switch gears a lot right now. And I want to get into how the government handled things in the Czech Republic. How do they take care of the people? What are they doing for the businesses that shut down? How do the people feel in the Czech Republic? Like, what's going on? Talk to me
Yeah.
about all that.
I mean, like, if you told any like kid like growing up in the '90s or the early 2000s that a fucking post-communist country is gonna like set you up better than the U.S., like it'd be like, okay, like I don't know. It's just like, when I thought of like when I grew, I mean, I think of like, I don't know, like always like post-communist, for example, or like I feel like even people when they think about the Czech Republic, I mean, they can associate it with this like post-communist economy, but like, I mean, the Czech Republic is unique, and I can argue that, but like,
How long have you lived there, just to set some context?
I first came to the Czech Republic 5 years ago. I studied here 5 years ago, but then I moved here in October 2016.
Okay. So it'll be 4 years in October.
Yeah, exactly.
Long enough to know what you're talking about.
I think as a tour guide, as having Czech friends, as being romantically involved with Czechs, I think I've gotten a decent enough kind of feel of the whole thing.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not like a fish, you know what I mean? But I think that
Sure, but you've been
gotten my
immersed long enough.
eggs or whatever. Yeah, however you want to continue the analogy. Um, they like, I think they get 5 stars. I mean, like, I know that you can pick that apart, but like, I was so proud, to be part of this, and like weirdly so. Like, I've honestly like struggled with I mean, my outlook on the United States has really changed over the course of 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, I took a class called World Crises in high school, where I learned about like what the United States did in the Middle East, how they overthrew a democratically elected leader in Iran because they wanted basically the Shah and political and economic interests to remain. I had then, like, over time, learned. I never was taught about Vietnam, really. I was never taught about Central America, was never taught about South America. And, I spent like most of my like kind of conscious life in the Obama era. And then I moved here in October 2016.
Yeah,
So,
what a
like,
time to fucking leave the US.
yeah. And I've been here. I mean, like, I've been home. I usually go home once every 6 months. So I've been home about 8 times, 7 times, over the course of 4 years. So, like, I don't know. I feel really weird. I feel like a friend that has that like cussed me out and kind of like pushed me out of their life. And I had issues with them before, and I don't know how to navigate it. And I have like a lot of trouble with that. And then so I have this like new friend, Czechia, come in, and like we have this crisis, and they say like, okay, well, like we're gonna shut everything down. We're gonna shut everything down before it gets really bad. Um, everyone should wear face masks on public transportation. Basically, seniors are the only ones that can shop from 8 to 10 a.m. in the supermarkets. Oh, and also like for all freelancers, apply for this, and we will give you 24,000 crowns, which is the equivalent of $1,200. And ask anyone, you can ask more people if you have them that are freelancers in the Czech Republic. I got that money in 3 days.
Wow.
Like, it's efficient as fuck, So like
And by the way, $1,200 lasts a long time where you are.
Yeah, that too. I mean, $1,200, like now that we have a third roommate, that's 4 months of rent. Like, that's super helpful to a guy that doesn't know when either of his jobs are going to start up, and that gives me the space so I don't have to like force myself into a position, Like, I feel like I'm just a little bit more comfortable because, to be honest, like, I don't want to teach like Chinese children on like VIP Kid,
Right.
It's just something that I don't want to do. I hate the idea of it, and I hate teaching English. And I know I'm saying that from a point of privilege, And like, if I never got it, I would be on that boat and I would be more stressed out. But like, luckily they, I don't know, gave me a position where I was like able to breathe and I was able to relax and I was able to calm down and go like,
It's
okay, what?
amazing because freelancers here in the US, if you weren't, a lot of times with freelancing and the gig economy, it's cash, right? Quickly, under the table, like under the table. I say that just because of the nature of the business, and you can get, you don't get to collect unemployment.
Yeah, can we, hold on one second. I need to get my computer charger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Timing, because we only have a couple minutes left. Okay, so it's nice to hear that that is what happened with the government there. And yeah, in a lot of ways, it's like let's not compare, at least right now, because I do have a question for that. But what about the whole, like, I don't know, lack of better words, I'm going to call it PTSD from the communist era, and then like being told that, okay, we're going into lockdown, or you have to stay home. Was there any nothing?
I mean, not that I've heard. I mean, like,
Do you think it was almost easier for people to listen because of that?
Look, but if you say that, I think that you're like, kind of pointing towards a cultural trend in Europe as a whole. You know, and it's also been 30 years since the communist era had fallen. So, I mean, even like, think about it, if a kid's like 10 years old, they don't really remember, you know what I mean? So like, I haven't asked a lot of elderly people, you know,
Sure.
I haven't gotten the feel from a lot of elderly people.
Sure.
Like,
That's a good point. That's a good point. People your age, it was over by then. So
even if they were 8 years old, you know what I mean? And the 90s, granted, was a different thing, but even like, relationship with the police here is much better than relationship with the police in the US. I'm a lot more comfortable negotiating with the police here. I was locked out of a friend's house, or I was like locked out of an apartment. My phone had died and I wanted to get into the apartment. I didn't know what buzzer was my friend's. So I literally at one point got so frustrated, I buzzed everyone. And I was like, that's fine, because if the police come, I'll just ask them, tell them I was locked out, ask them if I can use their phone, call them, and it'll be solved. You know, I wouldn't do that because I feel like the police would harass the fuck out of me in the US, or they would take me into the station first.
yeah, man. Wow. It's interesting. We definitely have a lot to learn.
Weird.
It
like
is weird.
I'm just saying, like, I'm sure that like my great uncle, if I told him any of this, would be like, I'm very shocked, because when I heard about the communist era, I thought all the food was gray and I thought all the buildings were gray, you know?
Right.
And then there were just red flags everywhere. Like, red was the decoration.
Like, no, actually, no.
Like, and yeah, I mean, you can have a whole dialogue about that.
Sure. And the reason that, I mean, there are a lot of reasons I asked. I always like to know what it's really like. And also thinking about something like this, like, what is the long-term impact going to be? And you live in a society and culture right now where there was something that dramatically impacted, and now you're living in a new world. And as somebody that's been there, you can see little impacts of it here or there, but like not. So I just think, okay, what are the long-term effects of this going to be? And rather than talk about anything bad, let's just go into my other question just for sake of time, and it will lead into this. So as we kind of talked about earlier on, you know, in the darkness is when the light shines, right? We talked about it. This is when like the greatest inventions come. I mean, we have to figure it out. When you have to figure it out, we do. So what good are you already seeing come out of this, Sean? This could be your local friends and family in Prague. It could be in the Czech Republic as a whole, in Europe, in the world, back in Boston. What good are you already seeing come out of this? And what good do you think is going to come out of this? And that's the long-term impact question.
I mean, like, I can speak on a personal level. Like, I know for me, like, I feel very sure of myself. I feel like I've reached a lot of personal development through the help of my girlfriend, through the help of this isolation, and really because it's time. I mean, the thing is that what's so beautiful is, I mean, you struggle with, like, you know, to live a happy life, you really need to live a grateful life. And we're always grateful when something's just given to us without expecting it. You know what I mean? If a friend just got you chocolate, it's just like, oh, thanks, dude. You know? And then you're just like a little happy. And the thing that I realize is that the thing that I'm constantly being given is time. But like, you know, and I'm given it without asking for it, really. But sometimes I do feel like I expect it or I demand it. And I expect that time be like turned or transformed into something that I really want. But I was able to reassess this and give all this time and be able to turn it into something that was more internal for myself. This being me being more of an introvert. I would be an ambivert. I mean, really, I think everyone's like an ambivert. There's no such thing as 0 or 100. I think those like very seldom exist in reality. And even if someone says like, "Oh, I'm 100% this," I'm like, bullshit, you know. But I know that there are a lot of people that really like struggled with this. I do feel a stronger sense of community. I think that people have a greater appreciation, and maybe some of those people are able to turn around and assess these things. I think that some people were able to kind of go like, okay, well, who's like important to me? You know, have dialogues and actually talk to people and connect with people that might have lost touch with, or because the pressures of day to day had struggle connecting with. But I'm honestly like concerned, or I'm worried about the unknown, because I know that we've taken a big economic hit from this. And it's literally at this point in time, I'm just very confused. It's now abruptly changing here. As you can say in the US, like things are overturning, but like the fucking Olympics were canceled. You know, all film festivals that I talked about. I had a short film that was going to Cannes, and Cannes got canceled. I had another film that might have been in the Carlo Vivati, which is the most popular one here, and that got canceled. That was just announced today. So like, you're telling me that when they're announcing, or like last Friday, they announced all these rollbacks, but they're still kind of like canceling festivals, but people are returning to day to day. Then like I know Sweden really didn't do any sort of stopping policy, and I'm not enough of an expert to know about all this. I think that for the Czech Republic, like we did a really good job at curbing it. And I remember at the beginning there was someone on Joe Rogan that was talking about it's not an if, but a when for when you're getting corona. So like, you know, this is really just preventative measures to ensure that we don't overwhelm hospitals and more people don't have to die. We're able to get everyone the proper treatment if need be. But for where I am, all these changes just kind of happened quickly. I was in quarantine, I was in a shell, and then they're basically saying like, hey, in a week you can get a haircut and go to a museum. And I'm like, but I just spent 2 months, you know, like wearing a face mask, being concerned because I was in a mini market and I picked something up and went, oh, I don't really want this. And then I go like, well, what the fuck do I do with it? Because I already touched it, you know, like, what am I going to do? And then I even have people that are just like, I've met a few people in the past few days that are just like, yeah, Corona's like bullshit, you know? And I'm like, I don't know. So like between like what had happened, how I hear with like Spanish influenza, it disappeared and it came back much worse in the autumn, and the economic impact of what this had occurred, I would say that like, I mean, we've just kind of begun.
Okay. So interesting. My original question took a very sharp turn there, Sean, because we were talking about the good that's coming out of this and what good is going to come out of this. And where you went actually is another question I asked, which is, when are we going to come out of this? And it sounds like you have no idea. So not even that you can't think about what good is going to happen, but like, when are we going to get out of this? And are we doing it right now? And it's confusing as fuck. You said the word mind fuck earlier. It is, I mean, and it is in so many regards, and this is exactly part of it. Should we be reopening? Are we okay? Well, yeah, it kind of seems like that. We have slowed down the curve. It is a matter of when, not if. Is it bullshit? I don't know. Should I be going out? I just did this it is a mind fuck in every stretch of the imagination.
So I mean, like, even like being able to get that out and reassess it, or really just hearing you talk there, I think that it is just kind of like oh, well, like curb it, and then like be conscious for a while. I think that they're going to have some sanitation policies in order, or you at least have to watch out for the shit. But like, let's say it's August and all of a sudden you feel your soul being sucked out of you. You're having trouble breathing and you have a fever. You're taken to the hospital. You have corona, but you're just put on, like, you know what I mean? You're treated because
There's
it's not
space, there's
overwhelming.
room, right?
Yeah. So instead of getting it in April, you get it in June, you know? And maybe that is kind of maybe that is how it is. And I'm not the one to dictate, it's a numbers game, you know? So I'm not the one to dictate, oh, it's a good enough time to move back. The thing that I think might have concerned me with here is that it happened so quickly, and some of it was a little bit of a loophole, of a little bit of semantics within the judicial system.
Uh-huh.
And at the same time, it's like, you know, Florida basically said like, oh, like, fuck this. And so it like, those two kind of went hand in hand in the same week. So it was just a lot of feelings inside. And so I was like, okay, like, basically Florida did this or other states did this, which I deemed to be a rash or unhealthy policy. But at the same time, like, we're moving back. And like, I went to the park that day and the park was littered with people. And so I'm just like, aren't we still concerned about getting it?
Yeah, it's really weird. It's going to be really weird to see what happens. And I don't know. Like, yes and no. I go back and forth by it's the moment. Ask me one moment, might have one answer. Ask me another moment, I might have another answer. But I can consistently say
Yeah.
it is something that I do think about and am worried about, but I don't know to what degree. So there's that.
Yeah.
Now,
No, I'm 100%. Like, yeah. I was
so,
very anxious about it at the beginning, and then now I'm like,
what can you do, really?
I really don't know.
Right.
I have no clue. Yeah.
So is there anything else, Sean, that you want to add about good stuff that you're seeing come out of this, or what good you might think might come out of this? Positive changes, impact, inventions, good stuff with people? Because that's really all I
well, like, it's super fascinating. Like, when you talk about like inventions and everything, like, I think like one of the things that is so fascinating about this is that no one really predicted it outside of like the medical community or the science community. I would say that the general populace had never really imagined something of this scale. I can at least speak for myself, and I'm a millennial pot smoker who feared about environmental disasters, a third world war, an economic crash, even a United States civil war. Like, I had been concerned, fucking asteroid, really, some sort of Armageddon. I like had a point like by sophomore year of college where I was like, I feel like I was born in the end of times, and
you just had this
that, like,
feeling. Me too. Me said that something was going to happen. I'm listening, just so you know. I'm looking.
Great. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we have that in common. That makes me feel better, but also more concerned.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, does it really make you feel better? I don't know.
In a way, at least that I have like a kindred spirit, you know, and we both feel that way. But then it's like, well, this isn't a good thing to feel.
Totally, absolutely. I just think, go ahead.
But I don't know, like, well, you know, I talked about this.
To the point that you were just making,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of said this kind of in the Lord of the Rings quote, like, inevitably, I mean, life wasn't necessarily great before. We needed a change. It's your point.
Mm-hmm.
Something was going to happen. We couldn't be in, the planet couldn't handle what we were doing. The economy couldn't handle what we were doing. Groups of hordes of people couldn't handle the way life was. And by the way, we are all part of a greater collective, I believe. We are all one big energy and vibrations beating together, feeling so separate, but we're not. And I truly think that there was a collective within the collective that had been calling in and wanting something like this for a long time, me being one of them. But to think, like, how could something like this be possible where on a global scale, we would have to take a pause and reassess life completely the way that we're doing it. How can that happen without an atomic bomb, like you said, or the destruction of humanity? In a way, this is kind of like the most peaceful way that it could happen, in my opinion, because I do think that we have an opportunity and a clearing to restructure a lot of things. Will we do it? Will we actually make the change? Will people take the pause that you're talking about and reflect and make those internal changes? Because if we all do, imagine the impact that that could have, and would have. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, so like that, if people were galvanized as if there was a world war going on, but there wasn't a world war, we would get a lot of shit done,
And is that not what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, in essence, but the question is, I completely agree with that. But I mean, will this really change it? I don't know. And I definitely feel a lot of things. And as I was saying, I feel positive, I feel stronger in a lot of elements. But, maybe when I return to day-to-day life, I'll be challenged and I'll be diminished in this sense. So that's one thing. But I don't know. But the point being, regardless, it isn't when you talk about technology, I mean, this is a new frontier. I had never imagined this. It was only until I mentioned to my friend how I kind of fear the end of the world, and how I asked them, how do you think the world would end? And they said a superbug. And I was like, oh yeah, definitely. That's what would wipe us out. And that was actually a year ago to the day, a week ago. So little did I know that less than a year after I had that conversation, there'd be a global pandemic.
And not to open another can of worms, but there's a lot of conspiracy out there that it is biological warfare right now.
Yeah, but
let's not go down that road.
No, it's just what are you going to do about that? It's the only thing is when you're oh, this is a conspiracy, this is a great conspiracy. I'm okay, but
I mean, totally. The reality is, it doesn't. The reason for why this is happening doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is, it's happening, so we have to deal with it.
Exactly. To be honest, I know my size. So even in this, this is a great conspiracy theory. Let's say that you're even a fucking part of the Illuminati. I have no way of proving that. And I can't just assume that and act on. I have to just keep my head, keep my feet, whatever's in front of me, I deal with it. And if I end up going to the auditorium where all the Illuminati are meeting and I finally found it and I finally figured it out, then there we go. You know what I mean?
And there you go. But until then, meh.
Well, then fuck
it.
Oh
my God, I would shit myself.
Part of the Illuminati? That's cool. What are your benefits?
That would be crazy.
You get 15% off at D'Angelo's.
D'Angelo's. Funny. Okay, I hate to do this because I honestly we've been talking, I'm sitting here, I'm this is why I loved meeting you. You're fabulous.
Yeah.
I really love you. I love talking to you. It's bringing it all back. Yeah. And it has been almost exactly a year since we met.
That's another thing. But that's always a Czech life thing. Because even so let's say even my roommate here, she was the bartender at the bar that I lived above.
I love it.
Yeah. But I just imagine walking, I always this is how I kind of imagine these scenarios. I imagine myself walking down the cellar, because there was a first floor and then there was a cellar floor, and that's where she would kind of work. And I remember walking down the cellar for the first time and seeing her and going up to a bar and ordering a beer. And I imagine future me, or quarantine me with a fucking mustache, going 5 years from now, there's going to be a global pandemic. She has a dog named Bob. And it's just life is weird.
Life is so weird. I love that. I kind of I'm glad that we don't know. And it is funny to think about, if someone told me, would I ever believe them of the things that have happened in my life? fuck no. My life, I don't believe it myself sometimes. So
you ever hear about the guy that was like, he was like, he was being held by the Taliban for like 15 years, 20 years?
Nope.
No. It was like a guy, like, so he must have been captured in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Imagine being captured then, and then like, you know, like getting picked up, and then like there's a soldier that's just like, yeah, President Trump would like to meet you. And you're like, like what?
What the fuck?
Apprentice?
Oh my God, that would be insanity.
Yeah,
Insanity.
it's like such a mind fuck. So when you think of being like cryogenically frozen and being sent into the future, like you really have no fucking clue what it is.
No clue. And that's the thing is like, we think if we can control anything. And I ask questions all the time. You know, I didn't ask you this question, which was, you know, looking back on this whenever we do, which for you, I can easily say is you don't think we're going to be out of this until at least end of fall, based on what you already said.
But even like, but the thing is that we're not out of it. Like after like having an emotional time or a scarring moment, like we're going to have the Olympics in 2021 and they're just going to keep talking about how it was postponed because of
this isn't going to be over
like,
for
the discussion is going to be there. There's no such thing. That's like saying like carving into the stone and saying like, when will this carving be gone? Like,
right.
Not.
You're right.
And
you're
like,
right.
Suck it up. It's there. Like,
Amen. Amen.
I don't know.
Which kind of negates my question, but I can ask it in a different way, which is, you know, I usually ask when we look back on this, which I can't because what you said, there's no back on this. It is in us and there's just moving forward. Which country's handling it the best and which one failed? Who's the golden child and who's the golden fuck up?
Look, I'll say shout out to the Czech Republic, like 100%. Like living here, it's been super easy. Like I'm saying that as a freelancer whose job, whose income was shut down. I not only had support from the Czech government very quickly, but even shout out to the company Prague Shakespeare Company. They started a fund that people would give money to for actors in Prague, and so they were actually able to like basically cover a month's rent for me. And so like, I'm extremely grateful for that. Like extremely. But like, I don't know, because the thing is that I even like, when I was looking at the numbers originally, I was just like, God, like Vietnam and Japan have such small numbers. That's fucking crazy. They're right next to China. How did they do this? And like, from what I hear, like Japan was not even really testing. They didn't test too much. And I don't know about Vietnam. I don't know enough information. The only thing that I can really say is I can speak on the United States, and like, I don't want to be critical. I think that this is just another example of how we need to work together.
It's a great, beautiful way of saying it.
So like, I had like, I don't know. The United States to me, like, honestly, objectively, when I'm speaking, like, I still like grow up and I love it. There are parts of it that I love. There are parts that I love about being American. There are like qualities that I think are so much fun. When I deal with Americans, I love it because I feel like I remember how to navigate the culture. I know how we are. We're a little bit more uppity than like Europeans, for example. I mean, not the Mediterranean.
Everything's awesome.
Yeah, but you get it. There's subtle cues when you're talking about it. You know how someone is saying good if they're actually good or not. Like it's not until you leave that you really start to understand what it means to be that fish.
Of course.
And I love that. But I always I really have been thinking about my biology class in sophomore year of high school because they talked about, my teacher, Rami Alwan, talked about how there's this horror movie called The 50-Foot Amoeba. And it was an amoeba that like attacked the city. And he was like, that actually cannot exist. And this was a lesson in surface area, or basically how things absorb water, almost like, you can have a small meatball and you can have a big meatball. If you cook them at the same time, the large one's still going to be raw because it takes longer for the heat to get in. So an amoeba of that size cannot exist because if they tried to eat things through phagocytosis, it wouldn't be able to go in and process quick enough. The amoeba would die. So honestly, the United States is a big fucking country, and it requires a vastly intricate system to work together. And like, we're being challenged right now. And you can see it with the coronavirus. And regardless of how you feel about it, what it's showing is that we're not a team.
Yeah.
We have people that are shutting down, and then we have other people that are saying this is bullshit and going around. And look, there are people here that think it's bullshit. And I'm sure that I've missed some protests, but like, this is split and you can't go both ways. Because if you ever fluctuate between a decision, between a yes or a no, and you choose the middle, you end up getting none of both worlds. So like man, like it's a republic if we can keep it that way. It's a great country if we can keep it that way. And it takes work. You got to check in with people. You got to check in with family. If you want a good community, you got to be with people. You got to communicate. Which I didn't even realize is like the same fucking word, community and communicate. No one fucking communicates. Like, even if it's a shouting match, at least get that out of the fucking way. Don't just say, like, this person's a Trump supporter. Fuck them. This person's a libtard. Get the fuck out of here with your marshmallow bullshit. Like, fuck you guys. Like, come on. Like, I don't know.
Oh, you know. And you just said it so beautifully. And thank you.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing else I have to, like, it was really beautifully said. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I will be running for president 20 years from now.
No, but it's true, Sean. And it's, I mean, if we could put it really, really fucking simply, it is about putting love first. It is about getting rid of fear,
but in that,
loving each other.
But like, love is, I think love is like more wholesome than we think. Because when I think love, I think happy.
It's acceptance.
Love is also
what love is loving something or someone for exactly what it is and exactly what it isn't. That is love.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what I mean is that it's like saying like love is like life, and like you can't think about life without lows and without suffering and without sadness.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You can't say like, oh, like, I want you to love me, meaning like I want you to be like unconditional and everything. Like, sometimes you got to be hard, and sometimes you got to be communicative.
Right. Like, love doesn't mean happy fluffiness all the time. Absolutely not. There's tough love. Of course, you got to make hard decisions because you love someone. Yeah. Which is exactly what Trump should do. Make the hard call and shut it down regardless of the government because you love us and you want to take care of us as people. Start talking about mental health because you love us, and it's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. In all honesty, like, regardless of what you say and like policies, like anyone across the board, I think that I will just argue that I don't think that he loves us. I don't think that he really cares about us, and like that's like hurtful. And I'm not trying to say that as in like I don't want to see him as president. It's just like I don't really think that he should be president, because even if like I don't know, like even if you're like a fuck up, which I don't think you should be the top office in a democratically elected system, like just loving us is not enough. You got to be smart about it. But if you don't love us at all, like, you know, it just seems like he's there for his own interests. Like, if he comes out with a net
you have the collective's back or you have your back. And when you only have your back And then, by the way, nobody else does, and you don't have, boom, you make one slip, you're gone. But if you have the collective's back, they have your back, you can make a lot of mistakes and they're going to be there to support you. It's like people think if I give you my tips and tricks, my insight, and shine a little bit of my light on you, I go dim. No, when two lights shine together, they become brighter. We have to remember those things.
But the thing is that but it's not, if you got my back, I got your back. He's like, if I have a certain percentage of people's backs in certain areas of the United States, then they got my back.
It's so fucked. Okay, we have to stop. This has been so good. Clearly we can keep talking. Is there anything else you want to say on record, for the record?
No, I love
on April 28th, 2020? Okay.